Just remember that, lads. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen between them, and now they're really roaring. And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
There was no live TV in Ireland when Louth last won the Leinster Senior Football Championship. It was 1957, the year the Soviet Union launched the first space satellite, Sputnik 1, and the price of a pint was just 7p in new money. Louth beat Cork back in that 1957 final. Pádraig Harrington's father, Paddy, was starring for Cork, but Louth had, among others, the great Kevin Behan, and they won by 2 points. Louth beat Cork again last weekend, and there was something remarkable happening in the smallest county in the country once more. Today we are going inside the Louth dressing room to hear how Mickey Harte has taken a team who just 2 years ago were in Division 4 of the National Football League to within one game of Division 1. Now the next week is going to define whether many counties will be able to call the season a success or a failure. So we're going to look at all 4 divisions of the National Football League, at the rise of Fermanagh, at Galway's new players, and at promotion and relegation. Later on, we're going to look at the potential mass exodus of county players over the next few years, and we look also at divides between the AFL and the GAA in terms of what players do and what they don't do. My name is Paul Rouse, and I'm joined by the former Mayo footballer and manager James Horan, by the Louth footballer Ciarán Byrne, and by Maurice Brosnan of the Irish Examiner. James, we have to start with Mayo. Top of the league, into a final. Would you go bald-headed now to win the league?
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Yeah, I don't. There's a lot of talk, about not wanting this and not wanting that and not wanting league finals and whatever, I don't think that works. If you're trying to tune up and tune down a team and telling a team not to do this and setting it up, not going out to win a game, I don't know. I think that creates a bad mindset and can change things around the place. So when you have momentum, things are going well, everyone's fit, everyone's pushing for places. You're the form team. Why wouldn't you go to win a national title? So you can be sure Mayo will be absolutely gunning for that. So they're playing really well, Paul. Flying, again, dismantled Donegal yesterday with ease, really, and have done that to several top teams throughout this Division 1 campaign. So going well. It is worth noting, though, it's a very strange Division 1. I know we've chatted about this.
Yeah, it's so up and down.
It's so up and down, and you've really good teams, not even close to what they're capable of, which can give a sort of false sense of where things are at. I think it's been a poor league overall. If you look at the games and the standard of some of them, but the bright light are Mayo, going well, and hopefully they continue and get better and better as the season proceeds.
If you were Mayo manager, who would you prefer to play in the final, Kerry or Galway?
Again, boring answer here, but doesn't matter.
Wouldn't care. You just wouldn't care.
If you start worrying about that stuff, you prepare yourself, and then when you find out who you're playing, you start to do your work and work on your matchups, work on how you're going to be as effective as you can be, and take it from there. But that's great supporters and talk and they get involved in that. But as regards to player, you just getting ready, whoever it is, doesn't matter.
And in Division 1, it is the big game in terms of who's going to get to the league final is Kerry Galway, and we'll talk a little bit about Galway later on in this podcast. But down the other end, Donegal are gone, and they looked abject yesterday. And it really comes down now to can Roscommon beat Donegal next weekend? What are Monaghan going to do against Mayo? Monaghan's long tenure in Division 1 looks under enormous threat.
Yeah, Kerry Galway will be a very, very interesting game in Galway. Donegal, as we touched on yesterday, and last week we chatted about everything that's surrounding Donegal at the moment, and that percolates through a county board, through a team, through management, through everything else, and just the energy around the team, and probably from people around the team isn't strong either. So for Donegal to turn that round against it's a perky Roscommon team. They were probably unlucky a little bit against Kerry, you could say, and came back strongly against Mayo. So, had 3 wins in the ball. So they're a serious team. They're at home, and you've heard Davy Burke. He's not happy with 3 defeats on the bounce. So they'll be absolutely gunning for that game.
It's going to be spicy, isn't it? That's going to be really spicy next week.
It's hard to see Donegal turn that round after being at home with the record they have up in their place against Mayo. Not to see the fight that you'd expect, regardless of the score. Not to see a real fight. It's going to be hard to turn around in a week.
Yeah. If we leave Division 1, Ciarán, because in fairness, there's only one game that matters next weekend in these leagues, and it's the top of Division 2 for you, Louth against Dublin. Did you see this happening at the start of this season, where Louth would be going to Croke Park to play Dublin for a place in Division 1? Winner takes all.
First of all, Paul, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be on. I suppose definitely not. I suppose from the outside looking in, a lot of people doubted Louth's position in Division 2, and they would have, I suppose, touted us and Limerick to be the ones to be relegated. But it's not to be. We're up, I think we're third in the table at the minute, and as you said, we're pushing for promotion, which is a massive game for us against Dublin next week. And look, it's a win-win for us. I think at the start of the season, Division 2 retention would have been, I suppose, one of our main focuses, and we've done that now, and hopefully we can go that one step forward. And look, as footballers, and I suppose as Louth footballers, we dream of playing in Division 1, and we could possibly do that next year. So look, let's see how next week goes, and fingers crossed we can get the job done.
What has Mickey Harte done in that dressing room? What's the single most important thing that he has done since the minute he walked into Louth?
Look, it's been a massive thing in Louth GA. Massive kudos to Peter Fitzpatrick and the county board for, I suppose, getting the 2 boys in the first place. When the news was first announced, we couldn't believe it. Getting Mickey Harte to Louth is unheard of. And I suppose from day one, the things he's done, I suppose it's a mixture of a lot of things. To come from Division 2, Division 4 to Division 2 in a couple of years has been a massive jump. He's changed a lot of things. It's not just, I suppose, proving us as players, but he's changed the whole culture, the environment around training, the whole training ground in Darver has changed. The facilities are top class. Even little things, getting our gear on time, which was something that I suppose we never used to get. The food we get at training every night is top class. We have cryotherapy, ice baths, and everything within the training ground now at the minute. So these are little changes that might seem quite small, but in the grand scheme of things, they all add up to, I suppose, make us better players. And every night at training, like, boys are pushing for position. That never used to be the case within Louth. Boys were just so happy, I suppose, to play for Louth and just turn up every week and see how things went. But now we have a panel of 35 players that are just pushing for positions every week, and I suppose for myself, I'm itching to get back. I know it's not going to be this year, but
you're out injured at the moment.
Yeah, so unfortunately in round 1 against Clare, in the first 5 minutes, I did my cruciate. So it's my second time doing it now at this stage. So fingers crossed, the boys will be hopefully in Division 1 next year and will be coming back to a great standard of football. So
isn't this one of the more extraordinary things as well? There, by my reckoning, there are 5 starters from the Louth team out injured at the moment, and still you're pushing for promotion to Division 1.
Yeah, look, I suppose that's why you have a panel. We're 5 players short. Me and Sam being one of them, and a few others. Yeah, Sam's unfortunately done his hamstring, so he's out until probably championship now at this stage. So, look, as I said, that's why you have a panel. We have a panel of 35 players, and each lad comes in and plays the role for the team. And we always speak about within Louth, it's the collective. It's I suppose we, not me. So that mentality has been driven across the group, and it's paying dividends at the minute. Does
Mickey take the training sessions?
No, he doesn't. No, Mickey kind of sits back and like a good manager and views everything. And when he has a word to say, he will say it. Gavin Devlin, we call him Horse within our hemisphere, and what he's done to our players and instill the confidence within the lads is being second to none. I've had a lot of coaches across my time in Gaelic football and in Aussie rules, and Gavin sees the game like no one else, and I honestly believe that we have one of the best coaches in Ireland.
What do you mean by that? And what do you mean? How does he see it?
He just sees it differently. I suppose us Louth players probably didn't have the coaching, I suppose, for the last couple of years, and the way he sees the game, I suppose the modern game these days and the way it's played, it's a lot more defensive, and the way he sees the game and being able to break it down into different stages is really remarkable, and for us to be able to get that coaching every week in Dover is making us better players. Like,
so you now have a structure in how you defend. Is that it?
Yeah, well, it's quite obvious how the game's been played these days. It has become quite a defensive game, and I know before I went to Australia in 2013 or 12, the game was quite open, but it's progressed on to a bit more of a defensive counter-attacking game, and at times it can be quite hard to break it down, and James will agree with me here. It can be quite a boring game at times. I know the game Meath are trying to play at the minute. It's near impossible to play that style of play, go toe to toe with certain teams, and I only wish we could do that, but that's just not the way the game has gone, and the way you can break that down and stick with that is quite tough. But look, that's just the way the game has went, and you have to adapt to these things.
Ciarán might come in there. I'm fascinated. Like, to come through the division so quickly is an amazing achievement, and even watching some of your games, for me the belief that's developed is massive. And to have that in Division 2 and not alone have that, expect to win some of those games and really have a good shot, to be honest, of getting to Division 1. I think it's amazing. How have you seen that belief develop, or that almost expectation from the players themselves develop? How has that progressed sort of week on week?
Yeah, look, it's amazing. It's not that long ago that we were playing in Division 4, and I suppose confidence back then probably wasn't too high. But as the years goes on, when you win games, James, the confidence just keeps building and slowly building. I think for a long time there, Louth weren't winning games, and that was down in Division 3 and 4, and I suppose the confidence was just depleted within the players. But when Gavin and Mickey come in, it's amazing what they've instilled in us. The belief within, I suppose, our four walls that I suppose that the ceiling can only be so high, and we've climbed the way up to Division 2 now at this stage, and we can only control what's inside our four walls, and that's the pre-season, that's the training that we do every night, and this group never gets too high and it also never gets too low. So when we win a game on the weekend, we literally switch straight on to next weekend's game. I know it's as cliche as it sounds, we take one game at a time. I know Gavin and Mickey might be looking ahead to championship games and whatnot, but us as players, we're so focused, and I suppose when we win a game on the weekend, we can't wait till Tuesday night to I suppose review the game and I suppose move on to the next game. It's taking one game at a time, and it's just a great buzz. I'm injured at the minute, but even myself, I haven't missed a training session since I've done my cruciate. I just enjoy going up to training every night, and the buzz is great.
That's an interesting one. And sometimes when you're injured, it can be hard to know. Do you go to trainings? Do you hang around? Are you involved? Or what role can you play? What role are you playing as an injured player?
Suppose, like, I think for myself, it's all I known as a kid. Like, I love football, and if I wasn't to go up on a Tuesday night, I don't know what else I'd be doing. So I just enjoy going up. I'm the type of player that likes seeing how other boys are getting on, because I've been through the highs and lows of an amateur sport and also professional sport. I like to, I suppose, keep lads on their toes. I might not be as vocal in meetings at the minute because it is mentally tough when you're not involved, and you're not involved in the clips, and you're not playing on the weekend. You feel like it's not your time to speak up, but I suppose dealing with boys individually and see how they're getting on, and I suppose pushing them to their limits and seeing if I can improve them. It's something that I like to do. And look, I can't wait to get back into the fold of things, and hopefully that sooner rather than later. But it's just about pushing them standards and trying to, I suppose, improve them marginal gains, them 1%ers that boys need to improve.
I think one of the great changes in the last, and it's happened really quickly over the course of this league, actually over 6 weeks, is that Louth can rightly say that you're now must be considered the second best team in the province. and I suspect that you would have no fear of playing Meath, for example.
No, and probably for a long time we did. Likes of Meath in Dublin, it's something that Louth teams feared. They feared playing them teams, but as I said, the confidence is slowly but surely growing. The seed's been planted by the two boys, and we go into every game believing that we can win. And we're probably at a stage in Division 2 now that we probably should have won every game. Clare, we were kind of hard done by a couple of last minute points in their end. Derry, we were well in the game up until the last few minutes. They got a fortuitous goal. So look, we could be sitting on maximum points now at the minute. But we go into the last game with a great buzz and the potential to play against like a formidable Dublin team who are still chipping away nicely, and not many people are talking about them. So look, we're confident that we can put it up against them.
James, if by contrast, I looked at Meath at the weekend, and they I know everybody is talking about how the style of play. There's something else really struck me though, and that is that there are a lot of very average players on that team. There's some good ones as well, but it looked to me like that the quality that Meath are just about where they deserve to be, which is a set bottom half of Division 2 team.
Yeah, and looking for a league campaign that started off so brightly, you know, and down the court. So yeah, it was fairly bleak at the weekend for Meath, and look, I think it's fairly obvious that Cullum has a philosophy on play, which, you know, every manager has, and there's a way he wants to play and set his team up. And so has obviously tried that. I suppose the realization maybe of where they are and what's needed is really coming home in every single game. So I'm sure, like, Cullum's a smart football guy. He'll know he'll need to review and just tighten things up in a very simple way of putting it. Trying to play the game that he wants to play, but defensively needs to look at how can they be harder to get through, you know, because at the minute any team will really fancy the teams. The opposition will have a confidence really going in playing Meath because of the type of game they'll know it'll be, and how many chances they will get. So it just needs to probably look at something there to see how can they be tougher, and then try and exploit their strengths. Because look, there's a long way to go, and I think I heard Cullum in the interview after it, you know, looking for patience, and it is going to take time, you know, to build and go through that. I'm not sure we're going to see a Louth story from Meath moving through, you know, or developing that quickly. There's a lot of defeats, and Meath have been off their perch that they had in the 90s, early 2000s. They've been a long time away from that and have had a lot of drummings at the hands of Dublin, etc. So needs to build slowly and build structurally very, very solid, you know, for both the game and for I suppose Meath's mentality, which was one of their huge attributes when they were at their peak. So
I think they've got players coming. So I think the minor team that won the All Ireland was very good.
Yeah,
good 20 players. Some of the best Sigerson players in the country are Meath players, but that's at least 4 or 5 years away before those players are going to be serious intercounty players.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it can happen quicker than you think. If you know, Ciarán mentioned earlier on about results, and you know, all of a sudden things can happen quickly too. But I've no doubt a county like Meath have really good players around the place. A lot of the bigger counties have, you know, a lot of numbers that can add up quickly to a solid team. But I just think their confidence and belief at the minute is rattled. And the players, you know, it's almost like they need something to hang their hat on, you know, to build something. Right? Okay, we get this and we do this well. That'll help us get this, and then, you know, build the step by step to build it up. But trying to play that game where they are at the moment. And look, I think it's the way football should be played. but you need to be realistic with where you are as a team, and how can you best get set up to be as effective as you can to try and win that game that you're playing. So at the moment, I'm not sure they're set up to give themselves the best chance.
I'm not excuse me, I'm not sure though about Meath. If you think about it, it's a long time since Meath clubs have been really forceful, even in the Leinster Club Championship. It's I think there's a way for them to go. By contrast, Maurice, your Galway are going in the other direction, and they look to have found players. Who are the new players that Galway have pulled out over the winter and in through this league who look like they're going to push Galway to another level?
Well, a lot of them are Pádraig Joyce's the great 20s team that got to Ireland. I think there was 9 of that 20s team playing at the weekend now, for example, which is kind of phenomenal to get 9 from one under 20 team itself. There's 9 players involved at the weekend, and then you go into more detail about how Pádraig has developed them. And Paul, it's interesting. You go back to some of the stick maybe that Pádraig got around playing guys during the FBD league, or lads who were playing seriously and playing a lot of games at the time, the likes of Matthew Tierney or Sean Kelly. And I do think there's an element of Pádraig Joyce which is old school, in that he firmly believes no matter what happens, the most important thing is playing football. Like, he just, regardless of gym work or running, all that kind of, he really has a lot of faith in that. So, for example, Sean Fitzgerald played at the weekend. I tell you, the great game, that turn, 68th minute just before Matthew Tierney gets pulled for over carrying. That was a huge moment in the game because they were away. That was a good goal chance, and he forced Mackin back. But Sean Fitzgerald hasn't played a minute in the league up until last weekend. So in the first round of club league games, he was released back to his club last weekend, played there, had an absolute stormer centre back, and came in and did a fine job centre back. Daniel O'Flaherty wasn't exposed at all really to the Galway panel until the winter, was called in off the back of a really good strong campaign with his club, Knocktakara. Amidst there was a lot of justified hype around Peter Cook coming back and Ian Burke coming back. But another guy is John Maher, who John Maher was a pretty good Sigerson footballer, made his debut, had against James during COVID in the Tuam when Galway were torn asunder by Mayo that day. He was taken off at half time, and it looked like, for all the world, John Maher was never going to play for Galway again. He wasn't involved in the panel that year, wasn't in the squad at all in 2021 or in 2022. But at the start of last year, John O'Mahony took over his club, Knocktakara, and he told John O'Mahony at the very start of the year that he wanted to have a right crack off a good club campaign and try and build on that to get back in with Galway. And that's exactly what he did. He did a brilliant year with them. They got to a county final. He was recalled to the group. Pádraig Joyce said that John O'Mahony told him explicitly that he was determined to try and get back in. He came on, had a great game actually. He came on against Tyrone, caught the ball under the crossbar to the end of that. Came on against Donegal and started and played all 70 minutes at the weekend. So as much as Galway are motoring really well, but as much as that is down to, I think it's been a long-term plan. There's guys there who they've had a circle around. A lot of that 20s crop. Ciarán Byrne is another one. Got a bad injury last year, but they worked very closely with him to try and get him back. And it's reaping dividends definitely now. The big criticism we had of Galway last year was that they don't have a panel and coming down the straight in the All-Ireland final that cost them. And suddenly they start to fill a lot of those holes.
You're sounding quite bullish about Galway's prospects, Maurice.
Am I bullish? I don't know. Because I think Galway is a really interesting case study, Paul, because there was a lot of potential pitfalls off the back of last year, that coming off the back of losing a final, and maybe would players be sticking around? Like, for example, if they'd lost that Monaghan game, I really think we're going to go back to that. That could be a real crossroads for this team. And Shane Walsh was just back, Comer was gone. Was that kind of negativity can seep, and suddenly they pull it together, and you're looking at a lot of very talented young players coming through. Tom O'Callaghan again came on the weekend as another one you'd be fairly encouraged by. They can mix it a lot of ways. I think you're talking about styles there. A lot of teams are either wedded to one style or are building the wrong way around, I would say. Meath, for example, to me, I think you build from the ground up. Like Ciarán, I think it's amazing how Louth went from utterly conceding a kick out against Cork in the championship last year. I mean, they pull them back, at times into their own half, to annihilating, like the way they took apart Micheál Martin's kick out at the weekends. I'm sure most people have seen James's catch from the way they took away that pocket press. Mickey definitely spoke after the game. That was something that they got a lot of joy out of Brit pulling that apart. There was clearly they'd done a lot of analysis on that. But my point anyway is that Louth have built from the ground up, like you build from the back to front. I think Meath are going about that the wrong way. Galway seems to be able to do both. Armagh, if anything, are reverting. So it is interesting in terms of how teams are being influenced by this. I think a lot of teams, Paul, looked at remarkably last year, and maybe I'll be proven wrong with this. I think a lot of teams looked at Derry and said that could have or maybe should have been us. And I think I watched Armagh against Galway the weekend. They're doing so many things that Derry did last year. They're flooding the 5 men inside the 21 in attack. It's the exact same thing that Derry are doing. Overloads in defence, the way that you bring other players to one side, trying to be very controlled possession. I maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of teams looked at Derry and said that could have been us. We could have done that, and maybe that's why you're seeing certain teams line out the way they are. Whereas I think Galway look at the players that are at their disposal. Mayo definitely do this. Look at the players that are at their disposal and say, how can we get the best out of what's there?
It's funny. I thought it was amazing. They showed the high behind at one stage of the Donegal Mayo game, and Mayo had 5 players inside the Donegal 21 at various stages. But what struck me was the movement in there. It was absolutely excellent. Like Ryan O'Donoghue's movement, everyone, they're clearly pulling space while still keeping a focal point inside. But if you look at Galway, so they've got new players coming. Armagh. Ciarán, have you played Armagh in challenge matches for Louth over the last while?
No, we actually haven't. No, it would be a good challenge. No, we haven't played them, but Armagh have such talented players within their group, and the style of play that they play is quite exciting. The likes of Reno O'Neill and that, just top class forwards. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on, I suppose, later on in the year.
Yeah, whereas there's every chance you could play them next year. Although Armagh, I do see. They are in danger to some extent in Division 3. I mean, we should, by the way, we have to note the fact that Clare are now relegated with Limerick, and Ciarán, they snuck by you at the early stages in the league, and then themselves lost very narrowly to Dublin, but probably worst of all to Kildare when there were two matches that they probably had. What was it like? I know you got injured that day against Clare, but you must have looked at a lot of video before that Clare game. What did you think about Clare?
Well, Clare have been, I think it's 8 years they've been in Division 2, so obviously a quite seasoned team and quite difficult to beat. I think we were ahead of the game for most of it, and then they came home quite strong. It's quite a difficult place to go to. They have a lot of good forwards, and they finished the game quite strong. So, look, I suppose they were quite hard done by to be relegated, I suppose, this year. And Division 2 is such a great division, probably the best out of all 4 this year. So, look, a team had to go down, and Clare and Limerick had to be them too. So, that's just the way it panned out.
And James, I watched Clare and Derry on Saturday, and I watched it on GA Go, and in the 42nd minute, so 6 or 7 minutes after half time, the score was something like 11 points to no score, and Michael Murphy said on commentary that he was struggling to see where Clare's score were going to come by, where we're going to come from, where they going to score, even though they were now playing with the wind, and you could see exactly where they were coming from. It was a complete unraveling. Yeah.
You have the two extremes, don't you? You have Derry on top of the world, and everything is to look forward to. You know, they're serious All Ireland contenders. There's no question.
Do you think so? Do you think they are?
They are. Yeah.
Do they have the inside forward line? Do they have?
They do. They do. They've a wide variety of players approach. They're going to be hard to put up a big score against. They're Ciarán mentioned how Derry played. They're 3 or 4 years ahead of where other teams are in terms of that method of play. So they're all very comfortable with it. They all know what's happening. I just fear when other teams start to copycat other teams a little bit. You can give away a bit of your identity a little bit too much if you copy other teams too much, which I see happening in Gaelic all the time. Teams see someone else doing something and it's hard, so they try and copy that and then forget about what they're strong at. But I look at Derry. They've right through the core of their team. They're hard runners. They're strong in midfield, which you got to be at. the top level, and I think they've a spread of scores that they'll be tough. I just want to go back to Armagh for a second, if you don't mind. I'm completely confused with what Armagh are trying to do, and I know we might come back to this in detail. I think they've themselves tied in knots from what I can see. You know, they're so preoccupied with how defensively solid they should be and who should be where, that their balance isn't right from defense to attack. Their transition isn't right. Their numbers aren't right. So, you know, you saw even at the weekend, a lot of their shots were rushed coming through. Taking it on the run. So that to me is evidence that their numbers aren't right ahead of the ball. Their depth, you know, so having enough numbers deep to stretch the defense, you know, that 4 or 5 we're talking about an inside line, there isn't enough there because there's too many back and they're trying to all run together with or just ahead of the ball. So you don't have that depth, and their width in attack is questionable as well. So I just think they haven't got that balance right. And, you know, I think they're overanalyzing opposition kickouts, what to do, where to go, whether it be full press, half press, or drop off completely. And I just think they're a bit tangled up in what they are at the minute. Like we see when they go behind and they throw caution to the wind, they press up and they attack and there's free flowing and whatever. So I think they need to just look at that balance and see how they can be more of a threat while staying defensively solid. You know, so I think there's a bit to do there. I just think they're overanalyzing it at the moment.
And yeah, I agree. And Clare, just to close out, Clare looked kind of out of ideas.
Yeah, and I got a feel for, like we've talked about Clare before, and Colin Collins, the job he's done down there. Some of those Clare players, to see Jamie, I see all these guys, and it's tough for them now. It's tough. And in that game yesterday, you know, they knew their fate early on, and it was just a tough.
Yeah, it was a slog. Tough
relegation. And then, you know, you mentioned there some of the games they played were at the beginning of the campaign, they had some really good performances and, you know, got pipped or can claim they were unlucky or whatever. And I just think the spirit got lost a little bit, and it ends up yesterday with just a complete demolition. And for a team to beat you in a relegation battle by that much, it's hard. It's going to be hard for Colin to lift the spirits there, and you know, for the season ahead.
I looked at Division 3. I've followed Division 3 closely for awfully parochial reasons, obviously, and it was a really, really emotional game in Thurles, Offaly, Tipperary. Offaly coming out by 7 points, but a game that was way closer than that. It was 2 very late goals which sealed it for Offaly and has left Offaly with an outside chance of promotion. Have to play down next weekend if Offaly win, and if Fermanagh get beaten by Cavan, then Offaly are promoted. Cavan lost to Antrim at the weekend. I think Antrim are one of the most unlucky teams in the league this year. I know they got demolished by Westmeath a couple of weekends ago, but they were very close to beating Offaly, very close in other games. They were very, very competitive against Down. The big shock, I think, has to be Westmeath losing 3 games, winning Tailteann Cup. All talk about them moving on and now cannot be promoted. But Cavan already up. And if Fermanagh get a draw, or if Fermanagh beat Cavan, Fermanagh are up. And that's a huge achievement, Ciarán, from this division last year that you played in. Is the way it's turned out, is this the way you thought it might when you look down, or have you just left all this behind you?
It's probably a bit of both. I think when you're in your own division, I suppose you focus on that massively. But I think Cavan for the last couple of years have been a pretty good team and have come up to divisions like we did, and deservedly so. We'll be in Division 2 next year and probably will be competitive again. Fermanagh has been an amazing story, I suppose, over the last couple of weeks. They've got some massive wins, and it looks like they'll push on and probably get promoted. But as I said for myself, I'm fully focusing on our division and next week. And
in playing, what's the big difference between Division 2 and Division 3? Is there a real? We'll take away quality. Is there stuff around the games as well that make a difference?
It's a bit like what James was saying earlier on, the way the game has changed, and it's such a competitive division. I suppose, like when you look at the teams, the caliber of teams that are in Division 2, you have Dublin, you have Derry, you have, I suppose, Meath, and that, like, it's such a high caliber of teams, and if you switch off for any minute in the game, I suppose teams can get a run on you. The way Derry play, they can really chip away scores, and you look at the threat Dublin have, which we're going to come up against next week in their forward line. So it's just a matter of staying in the game for as long as you can and being competitive and seeing where that takes you. But I suppose it's just the caliber of teams and the intensity of what teams play at, and being able to break their defensive systems down, and it is that much harder. Like
you came back from AFL to play for Louth, essentially. Why did you do that?
The love of the game. I suppose it was 6 years away from GA, and I'm missing out on that whole community aspect of family and friends, and playing with the lads that I suppose you grew up with. It's definitely something I missed. Don't get me wrong, I suppose my time down in Australia was an amazing experience. 6 years, it was a big stint in my life. One that I will not regret. But coming home and I suppose getting back into the fold of things was refreshing. Didn't have an easy run of it. I was only back from Australia and actually fractured my ankle in my first game back in an intermediate final with my club. So it wasn't a great start getting back into things in Ireland. But look, yeah, I miss my family. I miss my mum. Missed everything about the GAA, and I know in Louth and my family and my club, it's all we think about is every day. And I nearly, to an extent, see GAA as my job. So look, hopefully I can get back into the swing of things over the next couple of years.
If I'm 19 years of age and I get offered a contract to go to Australia, how much do I get for a year, more or less?
I suppose just on the professional side of things, growing up as a kid, it's something that you always wanted to do, play a professional sport. I know for myself, like you dreamt of playing soccer as a kid or whatnot. You never thought it was going to be Aussie rules, but for myself, it ended up going that way. Starting out as a rookie, I suppose, an international rookie, in my time, 2013, you might get 70 to 80,000 Aussie dollars, which is roughly about 50, 60,000 euro. But I suppose within that contract, there's incentives, like you get a car, different incentives. It depends the amount of games you might play in the senior team. You might get an extra $4,000 a game. So financially, as a young kid, it's there is a lot of money to be earned, and as the years goes on, obviously that gets better depending on how you're going. But look, it's a no-brainer for a young lad being thrown such money.
If you get to 26, we'll say, and you're a mid-team player, you're not one of the absolute stars, what kind of money would a player be on at that stage?
Getting very personal with the questions here.
No, I'm not talking about you.
If you're on, Ciarán, you know.
Yeah. I'm not talking about you, but in general, what would the stars? Just give me a broad ballpark.
Oh, look, it would range between 150k a year to, like, if you're a superstar in the game, like my best mate in Australia is the captain of the team. He's Aussie. He's getting well over $1 million. Like there's
is he really $1 million a season?
Wow.
Yeah, he's getting $1 million a year. So look, there is massive money to be made in it. Like I lasted 5-6 seasons, and look, I done quite well out of it financially. But I suppose like that can't be your main driver. Like if you're over just for the money, then you're in the wrong headspace straight away. So, but look, that's the benefits of a professional sport. You can't be.
And what are you working at since you came home?
Yeah, so since I came home, I started with a sports company. So I was an ambassador for them, kind of selling sports clothes and whatnot. So that got me back into, I suppose, the general lifestyle of things in Ireland. So the 9-to-5 job, which was quite a hard thing to adapt to, considering football was my job before that. But now I've set up my own Reformer Pilates company just here in Louth Village. So which is going quite well. Up until late, I had to close there, obviously, with the knee injury for the last couple of weeks, which was...
You had to close. What's your business called?
Body Rock Reformer Pilates.
And so you had to close Body Rock when you got injured.
Yeah, that's the nature of being self-employed. Had to close doors because Reformer Pilates is quite new to a lot of people. I couldn't actually physically show people the stuff on the machine, so unfortunately I had to close up shop. And at the minute I didn't have anyone working for me, but I will in the next couple of weeks. But that's the nature of football. You're going to get injured, and being self-employed, it can be quite tough. But look, the insurance.
How's business? You might be. As soon as I'm on the personal questions line, how's business going?
It's going great, yeah. I suppose as years go by, people are investing a lot more in their physical and mental health, and I'm the beneficiary there, I suppose, in that regard. But that's, people are quite conscious of how to look and how to feel. So I'm here to, I suppose, make people feel better both physically and mentally. That's a massive part of life at the minute. So I enjoy it, and hopefully everyone enjoys it too.
Ciarán, look, best of luck with the business. I hope it's going well for you. It's brilliant to hear your passion and love of the game. What you're involved in the setup now with Mickey Harte, so it's a top class environment as you described. What are the main differences from the professional environment on a day-to-day or on game day compared to, say, what Louth has at the moment on game day? How would you describe the differences?
The biggest difference, James, is like when you're in Australia, that is your job. You're waking up in the morning, you have this at your back door from 7 in the morning to 9 at night. It's your job, and you're fully focused on it. Whereas when you come back into, like, I suppose, an amateur system, Mickey and Gavin, they only have us a couple of nights a week. You're doing your Tuesday and Thursday sessions, and then obviously the games on the weekends. But at the minute, within our environment, it's as professional as it gets. Obviously, it's not as full time as it was down under, but we have access to everything: the stats, the video analysis, all the stuff that you would do at a professional level, which we've done down in Australia. So the comparison is quite similar, but obviously just not the time restraints is probably the biggest thing. And Mickey and Gavin have brought that into Louth, and the standards have gone through the roof. You're
after coming back in your mid-20s to play Gaelic football, and hopefully get over this injury, and you'll play 5, 6, 7 more years for Louth. But it seems to me, from talking to a lot of people, that there are players going in the other direction now, and going to be in increasing numbers, and that it's related to perceptions around the capacity to buy a house, to build a career, to have a future in Ireland. Is that something that you're hearing talk about?
Yeah, you're not just hearing it, you're seeing it as well, Paul. I suppose within Louth, I think we had 4 or 5 lads within the squad that were in the squad last year who left the squad and went to Australia just to go and enjoy their lives, I suppose. Look, James and Maurice will agree with me, you have to love the sport like from deep, because if you don't and you're not fully committed to it, you will find your way out of it. Being an inter-county player, it's quite selfish. It's a full-time gig, and if you're not invested, you'll find yourself out of it, as I said. But there's a lot of sacrifices it takes to be an inter-county player. Like, you miss a lot of things in your youth. Weddings, stags, a lot of these things you have to not go to, which can be quite tough. Going to weddings and not drinking are quite boring. But these are sacrifices you do for the love of the game, and hopefully in the long run, like, it pays off, and we get the success that we deserve. But it is tough. Don't get me wrong. I see that
idea of 4 players leaving the panel to go, and we do know that people have always emigrated from this country. I was looking at reports there in the 1980s, for example, 1/4 of the playing population of Roscommon left the country between 1985 and 1988. So this is something that's a retold story, where there's a better Mayo team in London than there is in Ireland, or there's whole parishes basically decamping to cities across the world in the 80s and in the 50s, and go back on. And it's something as well about why people leave. I think there's a change from talking to people as to why they're leaving though. Now it's that idea of what you're going to get later in your life. How are you going to build a career? So I went back and I looked at Eilish Kelly's report, which she did for the ESRI back in 2016, 2017, 2018 about GA players and the reasons why they were. And the turnover, according to the survey that she did, of GA players who she surveyed from year to year was 30% leaving panels. Now, I don't think too many people are leaving panels that are successful and going away, but I think at the low end or at the lower end of panels, there's really significant churn of players. So she then asked, why were people leaving panels of that 30% of leaving panels? So if you look at take that group of people who were leaving panels, and 22% left because, well, they were told to leave. They were not selected. So there was 1/5 gone straight away out of that. Another 22% said the main reason they left was because there was one of the main reasons was there was no chance of success. A quarter left because of injury. So then you get to the two main reasons why people were leaving. Number one was family. This is for over 26s, by the way. This is for family, or for over 26s, 48% of them who left the panel left because they wanted to focus on their career. And that really is quite a striking thing if you think about it, because over 26 focusing on your career also means that you're thinking about things like buying a house, you're thinking about where you're going to live and everything to do with that. And Maurice, it seems to me that this is a story that's going to grow and grow in the coming years while there's a kind of a broader housing crisis.
100%, yeah. I kind of tend to disagree with you slightly. As big an issue as this is for the inter-county game, they are probably better, particularly top inter-county teams are very good at alleviating some of these issues to a certain extent. Whereas this is the devil at the door for clubs. Like this. I
agree. Actually, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And particularly, I actually spoke to somebody who was at a provincial accountant meeting recently, and he said the first half hour of it was totally dedicated to reading out transfers to Australia. That's what they did for half an hour to start. And it's becoming it's a prevailing crisis. This is not a GA issue. This is a socioeconomic issue, kind of more, it's nearly tied to the national specialist strategy for Ireland as a whole, but it is going to absolutely, it's a significant issue for the GA, and it's becoming more and more severe. And I do think the strands to this, Paul, I've long advocated, I think the association would really benefit from setting up a task force to delve into this, because while, as I stress, this is not their fault, it's going to, there's two sides to this, right? There's rural clubs who can't find players, and there's urban clubs who can't find spaces to play. And it's threatening the model of a lot of clubs, just period. And until you fix both of those issues, like the issue of amalgamation, the issue of facilities, all that stuff is massive for the GA, and it kind of needs, you can't bury your head in the sand with all that, because it's becoming, as bad as it is to hear about rural clubs facing amalgamation, there's just as big issues. There's a really sick situation in Galway now, for example, about facilities, about my own club is tied up in it, about South and Knockcara, where they're going to play, are they going to move into a new parish, and what consequences that has for other clubs. So as I'm keen to stress, this is not the GA's fault, but it is a huge problem at the door. And I do think somebody needs to grasp the nettle and kind of realize, can we have a conversation at least about how are we going to amalgamate clubs, where are we going to play, how are we going to facilitate all these kind of people, because as you've laid out there, it's becoming worse and worse, and as long as the cost of living crisis is around, which looks like it's going to be around for a while, it's only going to become more and more severe.
Yeah, and one of the counties, James, that really has struggled over the years from emigration is Leitrim, and Sligo too have lost a lot of people from the west over the generations, and Division 4 is unbelievably tight at the business end of things. Leitrim, Sligo, Laois and Wicklow are all still in the hunt. It pivots on one basic game, Sligo v Leitrim next weekend. Whoever wins is more or less is just up, and that's it. How will that game be locally?
It's a huge game, obviously. Sligo and Leitrim they have real ambition, and drive to get out of Division 4. So that might be a good game to go to at the weekend, and I'm sure it won't be the last time they'll meet this year. So that's going to be really interesting. But can I get back to the point? I think that's a really interesting point. players leaving intercounty and the focus on careers now. And intercounty is a reflection of society. We have a huge amount of young people going to Australia, Canada, America,
Dubai, everywhere. They're going everywhere.
Everywhere. And there's a COVID bounce out of this as well, which is really, really interesting when it's involved. So that pent up, and then people want to look abroad. So there's going to be natural fall off, if you want to call it. And I'm sure Mickey Harte is doing this as well. But a lot of counties now, you can't have a player performing at their best at the highest level if his whole lifestyle and career and football isn't in balance.
Totally agree.
You have to, if you have a player that's playing inter-county football at a high level and worried about where he's going to get paid or how his the relationship with his girlfriend, or he's trying to do college or whatever, if that's not right and he's not comfortable and as a balance, he's not going to perform like he can. So there's been a huge focus over the last number of years to make sure that everything comes up together. Performance of the field comes up. For that to happen, his lifestyle, his relationships, his family, career, all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge focus on that. How can you maximize their career while they're playing football, or their preparation for their career, or whatever it is. And just on the COVID thing, we found it very interesting. I suppose where we're based, Mayo, we had an awful lot of players in Dublin, in college in Dublin, working in Dublin, etc. And the journey up and down, whether it be after a training or after a game, was horrendous for our injury rate. It just is over time. You Rob Hendy and Connor and all these guys coming up and down for games again. So with remote working, we got a huge bounce off that during COVID. So you'd have players, that are very serious about their career. These guys are in serious positions that they, on training days or whatever it is, that they could work from home, so they could maximize their recovery. They could go to training, they could wait, and they could travel in their own time the next day if they needed to go back up to their workplace or whatever. So it's a change in environment, like society is, but definitely the idea of you just push a player on the field and you get the max out of him, unless everything around him is coming up at the same time.
Did you have a dedicated person to do that with Mayo players, or were you doing it mostly yourself?
No, we'd a specialist in helping us with that.
What kind of a specialist?
Really, we'd a career coach, and then we'd sort of a forum of three top level businessmen that never wanted their names mentioned, never wanted anything, but really helped and supported. And we had the support then from getting players LinkedIn set up correctly, getting their profiles set up, all that kind of stuff would all be done by experts they'd meet regularly with the players to make sure that was moving forward as well.
I'll just put in there, that's so interesting here, James. I suppose that you've had someone in there to look after the players on the grand scheme of the lifestyle and whatnot, because that's the way intercounty has gone. But I suppose it's a lot easier for teams, I suppose, in Division 1, Division 2 to get player jobs that are suitable for their lifestyle with GAA. But if you go down to Division 3 and Division 4, these teams aren't getting that support, and players aren't. It'd be interesting to see what the breakdown of jobs are within Division 3 and Division 4 teams. A lot of the boys could be electricians or carpenters. They're making them long travel days and having to go to training that night. It's chalk and cheese when it comes to comparison between Division 1, 2, and then 3 and 4. It's crazy to think. I know my lifestyle, the job that I've doing at the minute, it does marry well with GAA. And for example, on Mondays, I leave Mondays pretty free so I can recover from the games on the weekend. That's just the way intercounty has gone. You have to think like a professional, and but it's just interesting to hear a few things what James said there, and that is the difference between the top level teams and I suppose the lower level teams.
Ciarán, did you turn down the chance to go back to Australia before you did your cruciate this time?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so that conversation came well before the league even started, and it was something that I did think about a lot. But when I really sat down with the people that I love most and seeing how that panned out, and GAA was what I wanted to play, and I suppose create a legacy for myself here. But that's going to be put on hold now for another year or two.
And I presume Mickey Harte is involved in that conversation and selling you a legacy in terms of keeping you around, is what I mean.
Oh yeah, look, that's inevitable. I sat down with Mickey, sat down with family, and sat down with, I suppose, the people that means most to me. And when I put it all into consideration, that's what I wanted to do. And I suppose James would have been in that situation. I suppose with a lot of players back in his time as well. It's about retaining your top players within the team. And I suppose in Louth we need everyone driving in the same boat to succeed. And I suppose I'm looking forward to get back into that next year. Yeah.
James, you lost Pierce Hanley, is that right? Was he gone before your?
No. Pierce was gone a long time before. For that, yeah. So obviously Pierce, huge success down there. Oisin Mullen, obviously I was involved with Oisin, and like Ciarán is saying, sat down and worked through it with him, you know. So yeah.
And he stayed on for a year or two then.
Yeah, with COVID and everything else and where he was in his life, it was just the right thing. He gave Mayo another year, and now he's out there with Ciarán at the moment, with Zach and Mark O'Connor though. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing how he does. From my knowledge of AFL, I think I can't see how he won't be a success. He's a brilliant player with a brilliant attitude, courageous, and huge acceleration, which I think is probably key for the game. His 0 to 60 is off the chart. So I'm really looking forward to see how he develops. But yeah, it was a huge decision for him when you take family and circumstances and relationships and everything into it. It's, you know, and his love of Gaelic as well. So it's a huge decision for him. But we're following him closely to see how he does.
Yeah, and I suppose your hope is that he will enjoy it for a few years and do what Ciarán did, and then come back to Mayo.
Look, want him to be as successful as possible. He's a brilliant fella, and we wish him all the best.
This weekend, we haven't spoken about Wicklow, who play Waterford this weekend, and we haven't spoken about Laois, who have kind of unravelled in the last couple of weeks by losing to Wicklow and losing to Leitrim, having looked set fair in Division 4. That being said, they beat London. There's still a good chance for them, but it's a dogfight to get out of Division 4 too. 4 teams could all end up on equal points. You could have Leitrim, Sligo, Laois and Wicklow all on 10 points, all going to be decided by scoring difference, which would leave Wicklow in a bit of bother. So that's the play for next weekend. The big matches in Division 3 are Cavan Fermanagh and Offaly against Down. The big match in Division 2, well, there's only one to talk of. It's Dublin Louth. And what we're going to do for the last 2 minutes is we're going to try and call the results of these key matches next weekend. I'm just going to ask each of you for a winner, one word, after we do the names, and we'll keep a score and how we go on all of this. James, Roscommon, Donegal.
Roscommon.
Maurice.
Roscommon, yeah.
Ciarán.
Yeah, Roscommon.
Galway, Kerry, James.
Pause. Go with home. Go with home.
Galway at home, okay. Ciarán.
Kerry.
Maurice.
Kerry.
Okay. Well, we'll have a point of divide on this one. On Mayo Monaghan. James.
Mayo.
Maurice.
Mayo.
Yeah, there's only one winner. Yeah, it's Mayo.
Mayo, okay. And James, last one in Division 1, Tyrone and Armagh. The two great lovers of the modern age.
Yeah,
they like each other so much.
Yeah, Tyrone.
Ciarán.
Tyrone, yeah, agree with James now.
And Maurice.
Tyrone. Paul, have you conveniently forgot to give in your picks for the last 4 games there?
Well, the line has again gone very bad. I'm much better on history than on the future. I'll say Roscommon will beat Donegal, Galway will beat Kerry, Mayo will beat Monaghan, and Armagh will beat Tyrone. Division 2, we'll only do the match that matters here. Dublin Louth, James.
And Croker, I think it's in Croker, right? Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maurice.
I'd say Dublin as well.
Ciarán.
I'm not going against Mayo. I'm going to back. You're going to back us. We're going to beat the Dublin.
Good man, Ciarán. I think Dublin will win, but I think it'll be really tight for at least for a long stretch. Division 3, there's 2 games that matter. James, Cavan for Mana.
Cavan.
Morris.
Yeah, Cavan.
Ciarán.
It'll be very close, but yeah, I'd say Cavan might just breeze through there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Fermanagh will win that one. Division 3, Offaly against Down. James.
Yeah, I think Offaly might bounce there.
Morris.
Down.
Sorry, Morris, that didn't quite hear that, Morris. Do you want to have another think about that one? You think Down will win that?
I think so. Yeah. I think I've been kind of impressed by it. Down. I know they got a lot of heat after the back to Cavan game, but
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. That Ciarán.
Yeah, another close game. But Offaly might just breeze through that one. Just about.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously only going to say Offaly on that one. Now, Division 4, the 2 games we'll look at. Leitrim, Sligo. James.
Oh, it's going to be some game. Leitrim maybe to sneak that one.
Actually, I wanted to ask you this now. Neil was on with us. Neil Ewing was on with us a couple of weeks ago, and he was sharing a lot of love with Mayo. Who do you want to win that game between Leitrim and Sligo?
Look, you'd like to see Andy Moran do well.
I knew you were going to say that.
Safe play, wasn't it?
Yeah, don't blame you. That's how. So you who do you say will win? Sorry, who will win that?
Leitrim will take that.
Morris.
Sligo.
Ciarán.
Go draw a game in that one.
Okay, I think Sligo will win. And Waterford, Wicklow, and London Laois. So Waterford, Wicklow, London Laois. James.
Wicklow, Laois, obviously.
Yeah, Morris.
I agree. Yeah, probably just it's worth playing. No, we didn't get to see much of this game, but one of the most significant results of the weekend is Waterford winning their first game in over 600 days. That's to not have won a game in over 600 days, to concede two penalties and a black card and still come out with a win is a fairly remarkable result for previous years. So yeah, that was an incredible result for Waterford, but I still think they'll lose next weekend.
I want to say something about Waterford. Actually, there's a really serious, genuine Waterford football community who are really serious about the game, who put an awful lot into it, and I really don't think they're well served by people in the county. And I get the love of hurling and I get all of that, but seriously, for Waterford footballers deserve proper treatment, proper status within the county, in all of that, and to see them to even say that they won their first match in 600 days, like what a sentence. Ciarán, who will win those 2 matches? Waterford, Wicklow, and London Laois.
Yeah, similar to James. Wicklow and Laois. Oisin's done a great job with Wicklow there, so I think they'll get over the line and get promoted.
I would like to thank you very much, Ciarán, for joining the podcast today. I really wish you well with your rehabilitation. Looking forward to seeing you back in a Louth jersey, and really wish you the best of luck with the business as well. I'd like to thank James as well again, and Morris for joining us today. Thanks to Larry for running the podcast, to Raf Rocca, and to Jack Neville, to Tony Lean, and to everyone at Examiner Sport. Beimid Tarnashkalua.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen,